G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and today I'd like to talk about gamer entitlement. Now, I'll level with you at the start here, I'm going to veer off course, I know I am. Constantly, we're told how expressing the negativity that we do, especially on this channel, towards these gaming companies is unjust. We should just feel lucky to have such things produced for us. These are luxury items after all. Well, I think it's plain that I strongly disagree with this sentiment, and I want to talk about why today. Funny enough, it's not actually due to Games Workshop. I know, I would have expected that too. It's actually thanks to Blizzard and their bungling of the Diablo franchise that led to this video. How ironic is this? Now, for some insight, at BlizzCon, an event for the fans of the company, which is held yearly and has been held yearly for like 14 years straight. The company Blizzard does a Steve Jobs style presentation where they talk about all their upcoming releases that year. This year, in front of a room full of PC gamers looking for a PC announcement for Diablo, possibly a new game, expansion, or even a remaster of Diablo 2, a crowd hyped up by Blizzard in preceding weeks. In front of that crowd, they decide to announce a mobile game. A bloody mobile game. Okay, my predominantly tabletop crowd, I see you want an analogy that helps you to understand the rage. Well, imagine that it's like going to Horus Heresy Weekender at Warhammer World, right? And you're expecting new Horus Heresy miniatures, books, rules, and instead of all that, you get a new Horus Heresy trading card game. It might be good, but it's not what you went for, and it's entirely in place of the very things you do actually want. They aren't coming. Because of this stupid release, instead you're not getting what you want for maybe not a couple of years. It's like having Orktober and releasing more Primaris Space Marine Lieutenants than Orc units, and thinking that the 4 buggies and a codex is fine, when most of the core miniature range is from the early 90s and early 2000s. So, I have to ask, is it entitled to point out that a company screwed up here? No, it's not entitled by any stretch of the imagination. But that's what people are saying. That when you talk about these things, for some reason you're acting like you're entitled to receive what you actually paid for. I'd like to put this into another context. If you purchase, say, I don't know, a car, and the car doesn't work quite right, what do? Nothing? No, of course not. You all know exactly what you'd do. If you bought something like a car and it didn't work, you'd complain, send it back, claim your warranty, kick up a big fuss on the company's Facebook page in front of everyone. Now, does Ford or Toyota call you entitled for doing that? Of course they don't. Their PR firms apologise and they do their best to mitigate the damage. They offer you free products, free fuel cards. They do what they can to keep you happy as a customer. Let's contrast this with Games Workshop on the other hand. See, you thought this was going to be about computer games the whole time. No. You see, Games Workshop, specifically Forge World in this instance, and their handling of Book 7 Inferno. The book was released with numerous typos, a stock background image which was incorrectly photoshopped, and these background images thus featured tourists vacationing amidst the ruins of Prospero. And when asked about on Facebook, via email, things like that, what PR did we receive? What was the damage mitigation? What were the solutions offered? The refunds? Of course not. We didn't even get an FAQ for 18 months. We didn't get a fucking simple sorry out of them. Is that entitled, I ask you? Were we entitled to spend an entire day's wage, or more than a day's wage for most of us, on a faulty book? No. Some people like to say that Games Workshop handles complaints really well. I think that's quite true. If you live in Europe or maybe North America, I have a mate here in Australia who ordered a Warlord Titan. It had poorly cured resin on some of the main chassis components, and he called them, emailed them, they advised him to perform several solutions, all of which failed because it was uncured resin. You can't just scrub it and hope for the best like these morons in the help desk tell you. And of course, naturally, his solutions failed. Solutions he was told to perform by the company. And after all this, what did they say? Well, you must have done something wrong. We aren't replacing it. And they shifted the blame to the fucking customer. That's pretty bad, isn't it? Alright, I'll use a smaller example. Myself, I bought several rapiers and I had a couple of parts on them that were not cured correctly. I also had a grok and crumbleberry from like the very first sort of 100 or so they cast ever. That's the halfling and ogre from Blood Bowl, for those who are wondering. And they had broken parts when they arrived. Or just outright missing parts, in fact. And when I asked them about this, they did send me some replacements. In a crappy envelope, all the way around the world. And of course, when these replacement parts just thrown in an envelope arrived in Australia, they were fucked up beyond all recognition. Now, that was the end of it as far as Forge World was concerned. Yeah, they replaced the parts. Meanwhile, in other countries though, people say, oh, I had a knight and it was missing one rivet, so Games Workshop sent me a whole new knight. Now, this is of course hyperbole. But my point here is that there are different standards around the world, and when called out on poor quality control, poor customer relations, etc., it's me, the gamer, who's entitled. The person who paid for said product, expected it to be of a certain quality, a certain standard. I'm entitled. It's not a free product, you realise. It's something I've paid for. GW likes to talk about community engagement and listening to us, but then they're snide with us and treat us like children when the hard questions are asked. It's a one-way street with communication with this company, and I bring it up because I honestly feel their actions are always indefensible. As a customer, it isn't entitled to have some communication with the company. When you have a complaint, it's actually normal for corporations to respond to you and try and defuse the situation. You see, I bring this up because despite my petition to Forge World over their Forge World price gouging scandal, receiving over, 6,500 signatures, I've yet to receive a single reply from Games Workshop. Not even a thank you and someone will look at this. We're talking about a dozen emails, multiple messages via Facebook, nothing. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not dumb. I didn't expect to hear anything either, because that's how gaming companies like Games Workshop and of course the big AAA electronic games developers operate. But do you think that if a petition of this size or greater was posted to a Facebook page of a major supermarket chain, fast food outlet, car company, do you think they'd ignore it, wave it off, or tell you to talk to the account nomancers? Let's see. Let's use a real example from Australia. In 2014, McDonald's decided that they were going to increase the price of the soft serve ice cream cone. A luxury item. Nobody needs ice cream. It's not real food, let's fucking face it. You can't live off the stuff. It cost 30 cents, and they decided to raise the price to 50 cents overnight. People complained, and the company within days completely backpedaled on it. Even though the company did have legitimate reasons for raising the cost, they hadn't raised it in a very, very long time, and it was a pretty good deal anyway. Now, they even explained this reasoning to us and said, look, it costs us money to make these ice cream cones, we're actually losing money on them now, basically, but because you've asked for it, we're going to put them back to 30 cents. That's good PR. They saved face because of it. Now, why is this relevant? Because it's exactly identical to the price rise that Forge World just pulled on Australia. Think of a $300 model is now a $500 model. It's the exact same level of price rise we're talking here, 40 to 60%. Most models went up by. Now, is it entitlement to ask for an explanation? Do you think the faster shipping is really worth the 40 to 60% price rise when it's still 2 weeks on shipping goods anyway from the UK? Of course it's not. But I'm being entitled again. Alright. I have to apologise. I've used this episode about entitlement and how Blizzard shit the bed with Diablo to talk mostly about Games Workshop. Like the salty bastard I apparently am. Salt. for speaking the reality, I might add, of a situation. So, I think I owe it to people at the end here to throw a little shade Blizzard's way. You see, in the case of Diablo, you have a game with complex mechanics and skill trees, with numerous classes, with PvP, with co-op elements. Something people have adored for decades, a game which needs heavy micromanaging, which contains vast loot stores. We have to pay a really keen attention to all the details on the screen. And Blizzard decides to monetize it, shrink it to a tiny screen, remove the depth of gameplay, and release this to the same audience at their event, and think it's going to go over well? Of course it fucking didn't. If you want to monetize your games to appeal to the mobile market for cheap and easy cash, that's totally fine. But there's a time and place for it, and it's not in front of the core audience who wants the exact opposite of what you just fucking offered them, you ignorant pricks. The saddest part here is that, like Games Workshop, you'll fail upwards and actually make money off your cynical scheme, and my only solace is the fact that people call you on your shit, Blizzard, and they aren't entitled for doing so. You see, entitlement in my mind is being unreasonable in your demands. If you say that not only does Games Workshop owe you a real October, but they also owe you a Nobvember to make up for the lack of Orcs in October, that's entitled. Also, no, Nobvember is not about dicks. And yes, I know you thought it was about dicks, my audience. Because unlike some companies, I know my fucking audience. Thank you all for watching this episode on entitlement of the player base that started off about Blizzard, went to Games Workshop, and finished on knobs. I'll see you all next time.